Hey everyone, and welcome to Brawlhalla Weekly, episode 10. My name is Part of the Creed, your host.
I'm Taza, one of your co-hosts.
And I am Physek, your other co-host.
And today our special guest is going to be Kylar Alice, winner of the first BCS regional qualifiers and longtime top Australian player. Super exciting. But first we're going to go into news this week. So last week we didn't have a podcast. RTX was going on. There was no BCS, and people had stuff. So we have missed a couple weeks, and a lot has happened in that time. So in the dev stream, first big thing is the new character. Monk is out in the wild. He hasn't been released yet as of this recording, but he is going to be released this Wednesday. So very soon, he is carrying spear and gauntlets. And I know we made sort of a prediction on the last podcast about whether it would be a monkey, which it wasn't. It was just a monk. Close enough, really. So his preliminary stats right now, and these are subject to change, are 5 attack, 7 dexterity, 5 defense, and 5 move speed. You guys have any thoughts on that?
Well, first and foremost, the monk is, if I'm remembering correctly, the first spear legend that's been released ever since Brawlhalla was first open to the public, even for closed beta. And that's pretty exciting. We haven't seen any new spear users in a long time, and so that's pretty cool if you ask me.
Yeah, that's really significant. I know people have been complaining that spear hasn't had any support in a long time. And then the other thing would be the dexterity stat in regards to gauntlets. That's something that I'm a little curious. Like, I think Core's got 6, correct? Or is it 6 or 5? Don't remember the exact number, but I just know that's probably not as high as 7.
I think it's 4, isn't it?
I'm pretty sure it's a lot lower, yeah. It's something
if it's a lot lower, then 7 is a huge difference when it comes to
it's either 4 or 5, definitely.
Okay. Then for some reason, I thought it was higher than that, so that's even a bigger difference than I was expecting. So that could be huge. I know the dodge windows on a lot of gauntlet combos are already pretty small, even though they exist. I don't know if that's going to change anything significantly.
So I mean, one of the things I'm sort of expecting is that the game has fixed recovery and variable recovery. And variable recovery is dependent on your dexterity stat and fixed isn't. So a combo like, sidelight into nair, which is something a lot of people are doing, has that 1-frame dodge window, and that 1-frame dodge window completely changes how powerful Gauntlets is. So I have to imagine they're going to keep that as a fixed recovery and not allow dexterity to change. At least that, combo. Make sure Sidelight's stun time is fixed.
Right.
But besides that, super exciting to see new legend. And, Physek was saying, we haven't gotten Spear in a long time. The last one we got Core was Gauntlet Hammer, which we hadn't gotten a hammer for like a year. The last
it was the first hammer since Teros, who was the very first legend released.
So it's cool seeing the old weapons come back. They're getting all these new signatures, which, of course, nowadays the signatures are super cool, like, every time. A lot of good anti-air options, things like that. So I'm excited. Alright, moving on. Mogar and Mad Skins came out in a collaboration with Achievement Hunter from Rooster Teeth. Did I say Mad Kings?
You said Mogar and Mad Skins.
Mad Skins. The Mad King skin. Which is super cool. We haven't gotten very much like collaboration with skins from BMG ever since, I want to say, the skin in the game tournament from 2 years ago in PAX South when we got Vixen Ada, which was great, and we almost got one from Northern Lion, which would have been cool, but it sounds like Northern Lion doesn't want to ruin Brawlhalla with a bald Scarlet.
Interesting.
Is what he's worried about. I'm sure BMG, I'm sure they have a workaround. Never mind if you're listening. We do want a skin of some sort. But
we just want more skins, let's face it. We just
want more skins is what we really want. But hey, it's super cool. Mogar, Mad King, I think they fit really well. They have like translucent weapons, which is the coolest thing ever.
Yeah, I was going to say Roland's sword in particular is really neat.
So
they're very cool skins.
That's pretty awesome. New summer colors. So these are the Heatwave colors. They came out this past week. They're going to be available for about 2 to 3 weeks is usually how long these colors last. So go get them while you can. They've got gold bonuses for these 2 weeks so that, as long as you play the game a good bit for this period of time, you will have enough gold to buy all the colors that you want.
Oh, bonus login rewards too for that gold.
Yep. So get in there, play the game, get yourself some Heatwave colors. I know that they showed it off on the dev stream and people were like, that's pretty cool, but that's kind of weird. And then they did tweak it quite a bit when it came out. And some people were like, this is much better. And some people were like, this is much worse.
Yeah, I want to know what your guys' opinions on those were. With the new Heatwave, I think it works more across all legends, but there's less really, really cool combinations that came from the old one. And that's like the kind of trade-off that I saw when they made that change to the colors. Because it went from being really heavy dark colors to kind of bleached lighter colors,
Yeah, just for me, I was never a huge fan of the Heatwave colors in the first place. When they first showed them off, I definitely like the newer ones better. And I also really like how, the community complained of it and said, hey, most of these colors don't look that great. And BMG was like, okay, let's fix it.
Right, it was immediately too.
Yeah, that was in the span of what, a day or two?
It was a day.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really great at the very least. Even if I don't love the Heatwave colors, I'm a sucker for exclusives. I bought every single one.
Oh,
and
yeah, I definitely did too.
They really don't look bad. I think that they look pretty good. They definitely look better with some legends than others. I know some people have found certain legends where Snake Goddess Nye and Metadev Orion where
there's like barely a difference.
Yeah, the Heatwave is just a tiny bit lighter than the base skin. But for the most part, the Heatwave colors work very well now.
And that's going to be true with all the default versus new colors. I just like that there's new colors. I think it's cool, even if it doesn't look that great.
That's a good attitude.
You go down the line next May, people are like, man, those colors, they're exclusive, and just the exclusivity makes them look cool.
Yeah, and the other great thing is that you can buy them with gold.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I love it when they release content that is gold based because not everyone has money to spend. I know I don't have a ton of money to spend right now, and I spent the last of my gold in Odin's chest, but we'll get to that.
So, speaking of the devs listening, they created Beach Brawl, which is a new game mode. It came out this week. It's very much like volleyball, except you throw water balloons and there's like gold, so it's pretty weird and pretty cool, but they developed it on stream. So if you haven't seen the stream and you're at all curious about BMG's creative process, go check it out. Links in the description. It's really neat, I think, watching them modify and tweak things on the fly. And of course, for them, this is really cool because they get to hear community feedback live. Because they're doing it on the dev stream. So, if you check out what it started as and what it ended as, it's pretty weird. Because I believe, at the beginning, it was these two completely horizontal platforms. That's how the map looked at first. And, they had the ball, which was a legend. It wasn't actually a ball. They hadn't put in the art yet. But they had a legend in the middle, and they throw snowballs, and all the gravity was messed up because it was still in development. But even then, people were like, hey, make the ceiling higher. And then someone was like, hey, make it an octagon. And it's like, oh, make the goals preventive from other people crossing. And by the end, they had this whole system. And that was a 2.5 hour stream. So I thought it was pretty neat. I don't know if you guys got a chance to watch it.
No, I didn't get to check it out, but I definitely want to now that you told me about that.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I didn't get to see it, but now I'm like, oh crap, I missed that. That's really cool.
So, and they had a lot of fun doing it. So, cool game mode. I'm sure they'll be doing more cool stuff in the future. But there you go. If you want a sneak peek of how BMG does development, check out that dev stream.
Full disclosure, I played one game of Beach Brawl against bots, and I lost. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Too bad.
So, finally, Odin's Chest is a new thing that has come out. And basically, it's a random skin that you get for opening a chest. It costs 100 mammoth coins, but it will always give you a skin that in the store would normally cost 140 to 200 mammoth coins. So you're always saving money, assuming you're okay with getting any skin. There's 2 exclusive skins, which is awesome. And I just think it's awesome. Like, I have nothing to say, but this is really cool.
Yeah, they did a really good job on that animation too. That wasn't something I was expecting when they announced the Odin's chest. Like, you open up that section of the store, the chest falls from the sky, and it's like shaking and stuff, and it's all really fancy and 3-dimensional. I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
nice job.
It is very cool, and I wanted the exclusive, so of course I put my last, I think 600 mammoth coins into the chest. I didn't get any of them. It made me kind of sad.
I got lucky. I got Terrace on the first try.
Luck of the draw.
I stopped after that one. I was like, got my axe and hammer. I'm in good shape.
Well, there's still another hammer skin with that bow.
Yep.
True.
So anyway, that was the dev stream. Tune in next week. Monk's gonna come out, although I guess that's this week. And we'll be very excited to see what 7 Dex Gauntlets looks like.
Yeah, definitely. And also, do we have a high Dex spear user?
Yeah.
I'm
not gonna be remembered off the top of my head, but
I mean, how much Dex does Ada have?
I think Ada has 6.
Actually, do we have a spear user that has more than 6 Dex?
I don't think we do.
If we do, there's currently a message flashing right now saying, "You guys are dumb. Here it is."
Excuse me, you're dumb too. You don't remember.
Time to move on to community news.
All right, so in community news this week, we've got a few things. First and foremost, actually something that just kind of came to fruition this morning is the Balance Mega Thread that's up on Reddit right now. It's sticky there. And this is going to be kind of a place for anybody to give input about the current state of balance. It's going to update every 2 weeks, about a day or two after the balance patch, just so that nobody is too hasty to reply.
Mm-hmm.
And this is also replacing the weekly threads. So no more Salty Saturdays or Thursday Toast and Boast. They weren't getting a lot of use, and I had some messages from people saying, "Hey, I think that this balance thing would be more useful." So I talked about it with some Pluck, the other moderator. I talked about it with Raven a little bit, got his input, and I'm hoping that this means that less balance ideas are going to get buried by GIFs and tournaments, and BMG just has a place to look to see, okay, lots of people are concerned about bow. Maybe we should do something about that.
Plus, it'll make my life easier, because now I know what to talk about for the balance discussion sections.
Yeah, your favorite thing.
So, if you guys have something you'd like the podcast to talk about, you leave it in that mega thread discussion. I'm sure I'll see it.
In addition to that mega thread, some of the other community news, we've kind of neglected talking about this before, but Brawl League, one of the big organizations in Brawlhalla, has this Monday mentoring thing, where, if I'm not mistaken, high-ranking, well-known players kind of, I think they either stream or they just...
Yeah, so they basically come onto Brawl League stream and open up a lobby, and people will come in and get personalized help that say, hey, they play a match real quick, and then, past people who've been there is like Raiden and Anipop, but like Raiden would have someone come in and be like, hey, this is good, but you're dodging in too much, and your weapon throws are all missing, like things like that. And he'll also have a discussion with Drop, the guy who's in charge of Brawl League, about more general topics like, hey, what do you think players are doing right these days? What do you think players need to improve? Things like that, which I think is really, really awesome.
Yeah, I would definitely love to see more of this type of stuff in Brawlhalla in general. I know that Berthin does some mentoring and coaching streams. I know some other players have done coaching streams, but Brawl League is really doing, I think, a great service, especially to lower-ranked players, to just have these really strong players coming on and mentoring people. So kudos to them. I've met Drop, and he's a great guy. His heart's in the right place. And finally, in community news, a new clan is here, known as Aphelion, and I don't know a whole ton about them. I think Part of the Creed has most of the information on that, but it's headed up by Boomy and Remy, and do you want to talk a bit more about it?
They've shortened themselves to A, which that's what Aphelion stands for, or that's what they've had to stand for, Aphelion, and their goal basically is, from what they've told me, is that they want to do more streams. They have like a stream schedule going on, But, Boomy and Remy, both pretty high players. Taza, did you want to say something about it?
Oh no, I was just gonna say that Boomy and Remy are like the resident prankster gangsters. That's what they go by in their team stuff. They teamed a lot. I was surprising to me to see Boomy and Remy actually team up for that, since I think there's a few different things going on both in 2s and 1s in regards to what their schedules are. So it's cool to be able to see that clan coming out. I know they've already picked up certain players. I know Astronaut has joined them. I think Jaximus is actually in it as well now. Jaximus Rhymes. Because Boomy invited me to that Discord, so I can see the members that are in it. So, other than that, don't know too much about them. There hasn't really been much tournaments for them to participate in. The last big tournament that happened was the Australian regional qualifiers, and they couldn't play in that. So it's going to be interesting to see whether or not that clan makes them spar against each other, so they'll have better results. If they're going to be pushing for rewards, like you said, more streaming content. They're really new. It's going to be cool to see what happens.
Now, does this mean that Tier is gone after a long time, or are they
Tier
still
has
around?
been gone. So what I understand from Tier is that basically a lot of their members just stopped being active in Brawlhalla for a while. I think by the end of May, they basically weren't playing very much, so it sort of dissolved.
All right.
Yeah, I think the last person that represented that clan was PKPR, and now he's out too. I think he's also an affiliate, now that I think about it. So they just kind of merged.
He and Remy were always close. Last I knew,
Yeah.
Remy was the head of Tier, so he
So
might have just
once Tier
decided
sort of got out, PKPR got out, and then they both joined Affiliate.
All right, I think we're ready to move on to tournament news. That's correct, Reed. So we're going to be going into that. The first thing I want to talk about is the first regional qualifier that the BCS has ever hosted. And that is the Australian regional qualifier hosted
Super
at
hype.
the 12 hours on the other side of the world compared to NA. So we got to be able to see that tournament play at an interesting time for anybody that wasn't directly from Australia. And the top 3 placements in order is Kylar Alice, our guest for today. He took first place after an exciting double best of 5 with Wright, who was able to get that bracket reset in the first game, but ended up losing the second one. Wright obviously taking second, and then Virox taking third place. So I was wondering if, Creed, you want to talk a little bit more about the performance of this Australian tournament.
I mean, it was really, really interesting. All sorts of stuff going on. Virox is a Rax main, and I feel like we don't get very much Rax in NA or even EU, so it was super cool to see, because Kylar Alice also plays a lot of Rax. And I certainly recognize Rax as a pretty fantastic legend. I think that more people ought to play him. But Virox did awesome. But Wright was basically this monster that everyone had Kylar Alice winning for the entirety of the tournament until Wright lost to him in the regular bracket. Went down to losers, won the losers bracket, and came back up. And in grand finals, took the first set, best of 5 in. I believe it was a 3-0. He destroyed him. And Wright's been playing Asuri, Katars and Sword. Fantastic job. He did some great stuff. He was even adapting throughout the course of the entire tournament. I'd call him out on some stuff. If he could adjust this, and this, he'd be great. And in grand finals, he was doing all 3 of those things. So I thought it was super cool. And it was a little bit heartbreaking because by the time we got to the second bracket of grand finals, Kylar Alice and Wright, Kylar Alice, who had not lost a single match up to this point and suddenly was losing, would have been heartbreaking to lose. And Wright, who had done this amazing comeback and was the underdog, if he'd lost, that would have been heartbreaking. So there was really no.
It was a hype grand finals, what you're trying to say.
It was very hype, and it was sad to see Wright go, but well done to Kylar Alice.
Yeah, Wright's really interesting in the sense that I think in all the scenes, it's been a long time since I think we've seen a top tier guitar player really make it far. And I don't want to debunk Wright's sword play too much, but I really think it was his guitar play that really brought him through that entire tournament. We saw him going for really risky stuff, regardless of the fact that the ticket was on the line. I remember watching this one match between him and Kyler where he tried to go for an NSIG Gimp, knowing that he wouldn't make it back, and he landed it. Unfortunately, Kyler was just able to recover. But those are the kind of things I was like, wow, you're in a tournament this far in, and you're going for stuff like that. Just in general, a lot of the gravity cancel tech that was coming out from both just any Australian players was really risky, really creative. It was really fun stuff to see. And Wright did a great job on Katars, which is just a weapon I think that's very unrepresented in high play, both in NA and EU.
I didn't get to see the grand finals. I was exhausted yesterday and I fell asleep. But I actually, one of the matches that I did get to catch was the first match between Kylar Alice and Wright. And I remember Kylar Alice is actually the only player I've ever heard of before from the Australian scene. And I saw Wright giving him a run for his money, and I was like, wow, this guy's doing really well. He's not just bending over backwards and taking it from Kylar Alice. He's giving it back.
And we'll be able to ask Kylar Alice about what he thought about that.
Absolutely. So the important thing to bring up now is that because Kylar won, unfortunate for Wright, but there was only one reward for this tournament, and that was the plane ticket, the decider who actually makes the regional qualifier and gets to go out to BCX, which is going to be the big prize pool tournament in November. He gets his plane ticket, which is confirmed, in a hotel paid in full for BCX, all courtesy to BMG. So Kylar Alice winning big off of that tournament because of that first place placement.
That said, I do hope that maybe we'll get to see people like Wright and Virox at BCX. Obviously, it's
international flights. It's
international flights. It's going to be expensive, but I want to see more of these players. That's why I want to go to this world tournament, so I can see players represented from everywhere.
At least, and that's the thing that I think is the best about these regional qualifiers, right? There's a lot of players that can't make it, and at least this confirms that one will at least by far be represented from each region. And usually it's the best one because they're the winner. I absolutely love this effort that BMG is making, and I'm just so excited to be able to see what happens at the next regional qualifier, which I believe is C. If I'm correct.
Yes. SCA is the next regional qualifier. That's going to happen in 2 weeks.
All right, so that'll be exciting to see.
Probably assuming Tiger's going to take that.
Ooh, yeah, that's something else we can talk to Kylar Alice about, because I know that Tiger plays on both servers, and Kylar's no stranger to playing with Tiger as well. I'm looking forward to asking about that. And then the last thing, there's been a few casual tournaments that happened. I just really want to bring up one that I hosted myself, which was Gravy Cancel Sunday on the 3rd this month, which was a pretty significant tournament because it's the first time we saw a lot of Koji representation in the top 3. Some really weird upsets. Like, a disclaimer, there's no prize pool at these tournaments, and certain players will say they won't try as hard as they would if there was a prize pool, so we have to keep that in mind. But some of the upsets that happened was like Noelle and Pugsy. They met in winners' quarters, and it was hilarious because it was at the top of the Brawlhalla subreddit for a while. Noelle took a 2-1 off of a ground pound on Pugsy when all of his jumps were already gone. And that's how he was able to win that match. And then Pickled Potatoes made a comeback, who was from Vex, who has been playing for months, took a best of 3 over Egg Soup and got 4th place this tournament as well. Those are really significant things to say. Top 3 being LDZ in first, Pugsy in second, Noelle in third. But the biggest point that I want to bring up, especially with Bo, is that Noelle is a really well-known NA top player for playing Koji. He likes to play Bo a lot. He gave Pugsy a run for his money. Pugsy was able to beat him in Losers Finals 3-1, but he struggled in the Koji Dittos, and he was able to really make it hard for Pugsy to be able to come out on top in that matchup to make it to Grand Finals. But when LDZ fights against Noelle, I remember because I uploaded the set, Grand Finals, a best of 5, 3 matches, took 7.5 minutes for LDZ to finish. He 3-stocked Noelle twice.
For all 3 matches.
All 3 matches.
Minutes total.
He 3-stocked Noelle twice with Koji. In the Koji Ditto, forced Noelle to switch to Orion, that was also 3-stock. Like, it was so brutally one-sided. And then to see Pugsy try to do the same thing with his Koji Dittos as well. Like, I'm looking at that and I can think people can complain about passive play as much as they want, but LDZ was a monster, is able to really show why the bow is so great. And I just thought that was really fascinating to see, regardless of the fact that it was a casual tournament.
I've been sparring a little bit against LDZ in the last few weeks, and the honest truth is that LDZ terrifies me. I feel like that I'm not at the very top level of play. I'm kind of up there, but I can somewhat compete with a lot of the players up there, with Remy, with Noelle, with Pickled Potatoes, with Pugsy even. When I fight LDZ, I just feel like every single thing I do is wrong. No matter which way I go, no matter what approach I try, I can't do anything, especially when he plays the bow. It is so terrifying and so dominating.
Have you ever been off stage against LDZ's bow?
You don't want to be.
How long are you off stage? It's probably going to be like 3 or 4 seconds. Doesn't matter how much damage.
LDZ, he's been refining his play a lot, which is great to see. And he's going to be competing in US West for the regional qualifiers. He's currently the favorite to win. So
he's also going to be competing in next week's NA tournament for BCS, which is the regular $1,000 prize pool tournament.
That is correct. So we look forward to seeing him.
All right. That's it. That's all I got for tournaments today. So that means that we're ready for our guest.
Yeah, Kylar Alice. Kylar Alice, can you hear me?
Hi. Yeah, there we go.
Hello. Welcome. First off, congratulations. But before we talk about BCS Regionals, real quick, why don't you introduce yourself? Where are you from? How old are you?
Hi, I'm Kylar Alice. I'm going to be representing Australia at BCX. I'm 16. I'll be 17 at the end of the year. And I'm from Queensland in Australia.
Sweet.
Yeah, that's awesome. Once again, congratulations on winning the regional, and I hope you enjoy coming to BCX. I know everybody's going to be very excited to meet you. But coming into that regional tournament, I think pretty much everybody was expecting you to win. Were you nervous, or were you feeling
I was
confident?
insanely nervous. The past 3 or 4 days before the actual tournament, I was freaking out because I was just thinking so hard about what have I lost? What if I can't play as well as I know I can? What if someone just shows up? Stuff like that. But yesterday morning, which was the tournament morning, a lot of people were talking to me, and I was reading Reddit posts and stuff showing support, and that really helped.
And one other really quick question. What did you think after that bracket reset in the grand finals? Were you nervous at that point, or were you still feeling like, okay, you know what? I've got another best of 5. It's time to turn it on. Let's do it.
By the time I'd gotten to grand finals, the plan was to not lose a single game, which was kind of a tall order, and it didn't really work out. And then, so after that set,
No.
I think it was pretty obvious in that first set. I tilted really hard. Right, absolutely destroyed me in that set. So after that, I had to take a few minutes to just calm myself down, make myself think rationally. And there was a lot of people taunting the tilt as well, which didn't help. I know Verox was saying tilt the Alice. The chat was spamming about the tilt. So that really threw me off.
Yeah, so it went from... They turned around really fast, because before tournament, it was like, Kylar Alice is going to win the whole thing, and then as soon as Wright won that first set, it was suddenly, Wright's going to win! Down with Kylar Alice. So I have to imagine that sort of stuck with you mentally, but it sounds like you got over the block.
Yeah, in the second set, I just tried slowing it down a bit until I could figure out what I was doing wrong, what wasn't working, and because Wright, he was playing pretty well. I wasn't playing the best I could, but he was still playing really well, and I had to take some time to slow it down and figure out what to do.
And that's a great tip for anyone who's having trouble against other players. Just try to slow it down a little bit. Stop just charging into things and really try to read what your opponent is doing and figure out how you can get in.
All right. So, grand finals aside, I want you to tell us a little bit about the Australian scene. And by that, not only the players, right? We got your clans and the players that you play against a lot. Can you kind of give us an idea of what legends are represented mostly, what aren't represented? The gun, not guns. I'm saying guns because we saw a lot, but what weapons were being used most likely? You've played on the Australian ladder quite a bit. And then afterwards, when you summarize that, I would like you to give us an idea of who you think your strongest competitor is, at least from Australia.
With the Australian scene, there's not really any specific legends which just see way more play than others, or any weapons, but because we just play whatever we looks cool to us, or what seems like fun.
It's a great mentality.
But the most common weapon is probably either spear, guns, or hammer in the Australian scene. And for my strongest competitor, I'll say Wright, because the Asuri pick and the way he plays, he'll never admit it, but he thinks really hard when he plays. He knows exactly what he's doing, he adapts really quickly. He reads people really well, and all that just makes it really hard for me to face him.
Yeah, I mean, during the tournament analysis, I was saying that Wright was improving every single game he was playing, and it really seemed like a snowball effect. So, well done, like getting past that.
Thanks.
All right. So, how and when did you first discover Brawlhalla?
I found out about Brawlhalla the day after last Christmas because I was hanging out with some friends in Skype, and they were bored, so they were just like, "Hey, check out this game." And at first, I really didn't want to because I don't know, it just didn't seem that great to me. But then I started playing, and I just loved it from then.
That's nice. So, did you really have any experience in 2D fighters or 2D platform fighters before Brawlhalla?
I used to play
was it just sort of
Smash, Melee, and Brawl.
Okay.
But I was never really good with them, and that was when I was really young. Yeah, but other than that, that's it.
So now that we know how you kind of discovered Brawlhalla and made your way to the top of the Australian scene, it's obviously not just Australia anymore. Now, thanks to the regional, the entire world, 400 people, 500 people consistently were in the Twitch for that regional. A ton of people have seen the Australian scene now. So, as kind of its spearhead, its frontman, do you have any hopes or plans for helping that scene grow?
I'll be doing what I can to make the Australian scene more entertaining and popular and all that, but I don't have anything big specific in mind at the moment. I just slow growth. That's all I can really do.
Very nice. I mean, I know that regional qualifiers certainly helped make Australia at the forefront because, for me personally, that was one of the most hype Brawlhalla tournaments ever. Like, just the intensity of those final few matches were just fantastic, and you guys played amazing.
Everyone was going off. It was awesome.
All right, and then back to the tournament scene. I want to know not only how confident you are feeling going to the BCX, but whether or not you have any plans for like training, sparring, who you're going to be going like against to be able to prepare yourself to be fighting against this. How do you think you're going to do playing against the top players in the world, and what are your expectations in regards to placement in general? Like, what are you planning on doing now that you know for sure you're going to BCX?
Well, at this point, as of right now, I feel like some of the best players in the world are on a completely different level to me. So I'll have to train really hard for that, and I don't know exactly what I can't really train against them other than train for them except for like studying how they play and stuff. So I'll just have to try new stuff in Australia and see how that goes.
So you're thinking your training plan between now and BCX is going to be like watching a lot of NA and EU tournaments just to get a sense of how to play
pretty
against
much.
your opponents?
And then I'll just
spend some time in training mode, maybe study up that frame data.
Practice is done like combos. I guess something else to think about is I'm not sure how many setups are going to be at BCX, but I know something that's really popular with any other fighting game tournament is friendlies. That's the thing that you can get at venues. And you're not always going to be playing in tournament. You're going to be having time in between matches. So you might even have an opportunity to spar against people when you're actually at the place. So that's something to look forward to, too, as well. I mean, it's not necessarily a lot of practice, but you at least get to be able to play with some people outside of a tournament setting. But that means that, so you can't really do much in NA and EU. What about Tiger? You said that you were sparring him on stream when you had the interview, and I want to know a little bit about how much experience that you actually have with him. How do you think you stand up against him, stuff like that?
Right now, Tiger's still he's still a lot better than me, but I'm slowly getting closer to his level. He is amazing. Like even with the lag difference, it's clear he's better than me. I want to spar him as much as I can because I have a lot of fun playing him because he's really challenging and he usually wins, like 9 times out of 10. So it's a lot of fun.
Jeez.
And hopefully he goes to BCX as well.
You mentioned the lag difference. So Tiger is, from what I've heard, very close to the servers. Like, is he the one without the lag?
When he's on C.
Yeah, I've been told that Tiger lives literally right on top of the servers in C. But do you spar him on C or do you spar him on the Australian servers?
Ever since he lost his VPN, we've been sparring on C.
All right, well, that's pretty sweet. So we can't wait for that, but until BCX, you've got a lot of time to train up, so good luck with that. I do want to take some time to ask you some of our standard top player questions. Firstly, what games do you like to play in your free time besides Brawlhalla?
Aside from Brawlhalla, pretty much the only game I play is old school RuneScape because it's really chill and I have a lot of fun with it.
Oh.
All right, are we talking RuneScape 1 or RuneScape 2?
RuneScape 2.
All right,
There's
there we go. That's old school RuneScape.
because there's classic RuneScape 2 and RuneScape 3. I'm playing RuneScape 2.
So it's just RuneScape and Brawlhalla?
I used to play League of Legends like all the time, but for the past few months I just haven't really touched it.
Ooh, is that because of dynamic queue?
No, it's not. I just don't enjoy
I know
the
it's
game
been a
anymore.
reason that's killed.
I play every once in a while to
that's
stop
a good
decay,
reason.
but
I'll take it.
that's it.
All
right. So if you weren't dedicating yourself to being a top player in Brawlhalla, what other hobbies or careers might you be pursuing?
There's a few things that I'm doing. Well, I'm doing a course in technical production, so that's one thing I could be working on. But other than that, it would just be either fitness or music. Those are the options I've got.
That's pretty sweet. And so you're still in school now?
I'm in my final year.
So that's sort of what you're trying to study towards is technical production.
I've got a
pretty
TAFE
sweet
course through school for that.
All right. So where does your in-game name Kylar Alice come from? It sounds like your name, but just so we're clear.
Kylar, the Kylar comes from a book series, the Night Angel trilogy. The main character in there is Kylar Sterling, and that I just love that name heaps. And Alice is just another name that I love, and they sound really well together. In this order, at least I think they do anyway.
So just so we're clear, Kylar Alice is not your real name, because I know a lot of people have wondered.
I'm sorry,
that,
friends.
is that
it's
just
not my real name.
Okay.
It's okay. So not another Diane.
But it is a great name, so well done on picking that. All right, and finally, if you had to pick just one, because I know you played a bunch of Legends, all of them with like a black color, so you've put in the time. If you had to pick just one, who's your favorite Legend in the game?
I've got to think for a bit. I've got like 5 or 6 options here.
5 or 6? Okay, so...
Whoa, do you have a favorite weapon?
Just sort of running through them, because during BCS, you played Hattori, Vrax, and Ada, and those are your main 3. Do you have others that you really love?
I really like Core, and Teros is pretty fun sometimes. Who else is good? Diane is awesome. Who else is there? Ember's fun from time to time, but I wouldn't say Ember's my favorite, or Diana. Actually, maybe Diana.
But you do. It sounds like you do like a lot of the Legends. You like
I really like all of the Legends in this game. They're all a lot of fun, and some of them are really cute. I don't know, Vrax is really cute.
But unfortunately...
That sounds really weird, but he's really cute.
No, what? Which Vrax skin, though? Default or something else? That's a tough question right now. The Elvis Vrax skin's pretty cool.
The Elvis one has a lot of swag.
Oh, yeah.
I like the Viking one.
Ooh,
especially with
okay.
the sunset color.
Okay, but I am gonna force you to pick just one. You gotta pick just
Wow.
one. Who's it gonna be? Who's
That's
it gonna
tough.
I'll go with Ada.
be? All right.
Okay.
You heard it here first. Kylar Alice likes Ada the best.
Ooh, and then one more question then.
Yeah.
Because he said Ada. Monk, are you excited for that? And are you going to play the hell out of that? Because it's going to have Spear, which I know Ada has, and then the 7-dex gauntlets. Like you said you liked Core. Is that going to be a legend that you're really looking forward to really learning?
Yeah, I am looking forward to Monk. Like, I haven't actually... I'll be honest, I haven't actually looked at him yet. I didn't watch a stream. I haven't watched the VOD or anything. But he's a new character, so I want to try him out and see how he goes. With Core, it was really slow, so I don't know how I'll go with Monk though. But it looks pretty cool. I mean, sounds like I'll want to play him.
All right. Yeah, sweet. Well, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast, Kylar Alice. Once again, congratulations. We can't wait to see you at BCS.
Thank you very much.
All right, later.
Bye. All right. With that, we have brought ourselves to the balance and meta discussion section of the podcast. So, I keep saying this every week, but I just want to reiterate it. Balance changes for the past few patches have been quite minimal. Just little tweaks here and there. So I don't think we really have time to go over. We're not really going to go over the patch and say like, oh, this got an extra 1 frame of recovery. How does that change the meta?
Well, that's that's actually a big deal. It was the bow and arrow that got changed.
All right, you want to talk about the bow and arrow?
A little bit, because we're going to be talking about bow as we get into North America
Yes.
and EU, so we could bring that up. But the few changes that there was there, bow did get slightly tweaked, as did I think guitar ground pound. When it's the stage, that's not a big deal. But the bow one was kind of
well. Okay, I like guitar ground pound.
all right. So then we have things to talk about.
Okay, so let's start with this bow and arrow.
I just want to talk about bow and arrow in general before we talk about the change.
Okay,
And
well,
that
why
is-
patch notes right now, and there's no change to bow and arrow.
Oh, well, it was like a week ago. It was the week that we skipped the podcast.
There's neutral light and side air.
Yeah.
Are the two changes.
Wait. Hold on.
Okay, but do we want to talk about bow now? We'll talk about bow now.
Yeah.
So, I said before, all the top players are having all these different ideas of what is broken right now. Bow is broken, guns are broken, axe, all sorts of things. This past week, I've been hearing bow said more and more. Bow seems to be the majority of top player complaints about what is broken. So, you guys tell me, how broken is bow?
How broken? I like it. I actually like that a lot.
How broken is bro?
Guys, you can tell that part of the Creed was up late last night, and he is still feeling those effects.
Casting the pot. Yeah. So, Boken. Let's talk about it.
Bow. Yeah. I guess I'll start with my things. It's that I've heard different player opinions from all over the place, but the thing that's a really big deal with bow is that I think when it comes to reacting and responding to another player's options, it's always great to have a move that is kind of too quick to react to, right? Like if you look at a weapon like Axe, people will say as much as they want about the sweeping hitboxes where it reaches everywhere, but Axe doesn't really have any super fast move besides like downlight that you really can't react to. But then you've got the bow, which has got moves that are really easy to use, really fast, and they kind of go over the place. You've got the Nair, you've got the Sair, you've got other things like that in general. It's really difficult to be able to kind of like see your opponent throw out a move and then punish it because it doesn't last long enough to be punished.
I mean, speaking of last long enough to be punished, like the change that happened to both side air, increased fixed recovery on miss from 0 to 1. It had 0 fixed recovery. Like
right.
That's worth noting.
Yeah. So little changes like that are really going to help it out. But as like people get better and better with the weapon, you're going to get faster and faster with it, right? Because before it was supposed to be this unique sense in the sense that like the side air is like this really fast move that you can use to punch and stuff. But when people get so good at it and the amount of force that it has, I mean, we see people ledge guard with bow all the time. They just hit them into the stage. You don't get your jumps back if you get hit into the stage, and then you're dead. Like that was a big concern. I think that's a large reason why that change was made.
I just have a few things to say about the bow, which for me, I feel like it's been definitely one of the best 2 or 3 weapons for a long time. First off, what you were saying about the side air is completely accurate, and I don't know hopefully a lot of people remember back in the day when Qatar downlight was really overpowered. At the same time, everybody was complaining about side air and neutral air. And the big thing about side air that everybody was complaining about was you can do it too fast, you can't punish it, you can just spam it too much. Right now, bow side air is in almost an identical situation to what Qatar side air was back then. It's nearly the same exact move, maybe a little bit less force, but it comes out fast enough that it doesn't really matter.
And it hits diagonally, which is like one of those really powerful things of if you can knock your opponent down diagonally off the stage, then they're in a lot more trouble than a lot of the other side airs.
And then something else the side air gets from the bow, which Qatar's didn't have, is that bow down aerial, right? You can almost immediately side air after hitting that. Like I think LDZ is the only player on the bow that I've really seen use this to create a core, but if you're on the side of the stage and you find that down air punish on somebody that's in low percent, immediately just fall into them and swat them aside with the side air, that's the stock. Like,
actually, that did used to be something that happened quite often with the Qatars. Not as often now with the force increase from down air, but that was a big thing, a big complaint from Qatars at that time also. So
never mind then.
That's even more of a parallel. Everybody used to complain about Qatars needing an aerial nerf. They got it. Now bow is in much the same position.
So, I mean, it sounds like, Physek, what you're saying is that people complained a lot about Qatar back in the day, and you're not hearing the complaints as much with bow, despite the problems being similar.
I'm definitely not.
Not until this week.
And I think the big thing about the bow is that its ground game isn't as strong as the Qatar ground game was, so people don't feel like it's necessarily as strong. But let me put it to you this way. I was talking to Dobrein once while I was streaming, and I asked him, how do I beat the bow? How do I punish bow air?
Guns or bow is probably what he said.
He said, you don't.
Yeah.
Oh.
You don't. You can't punish bow air.
I want to elaborate on that.
All you have to do is get out of the way and try to outspace it on the ground. That's what he told me.
And a big part of that comes from the bow and air. And the neutral air is really, really strong, and I'm hoping that they modify a little bit more as time goes on, because I think it's got the ability to like beat and out prioritize almost everything. And it's one of those things where if you time it right, it's so fast. If you don't hit it, there's no lag to it. And if you do hit it, it sends them straight up, so they have to either fall on you or recover to the side of the stage. But the jump's already most likely gone. I know that there's a situation where, like, if you time it correctly, it even out prioritizes most ground pounds. I remember watching, there was this set that LDZ was so far ahead of when he was playing Koji that he was purposely getting hit by ground pounds, trying to find that like frame perfect window where the Nair would actually beat that ground pound, and then he was just getting it, so that was one less option the person had. When it comes to the aerial game, the bow has got almost everything beat. And it's just because it has so much priority and it's so fast.
Okay, so here's a question. You could make a very similar argument about Qatar's.
Yes.
That Qatar's aerial game does a ton of coverage. So
hold on 1 second, I gotta turn that off.
So the question is, if Qatar's are not considered one of the most OP weapons, at least not as much as bow is being yelled at now. There's still a lot of players who consider Qatar one of the lower tier weapons. So, what is it about Qatar's that makes it so that its option coverage isn't getting yelled at, where bow's option coverage is?
I think that one of the big differences is that a lot of the things that people complained about, or that used to complain about Qatar's, was already fixed. The side air is a lot slower than it used to be. It's a lot slower than bow side air, which is, as you said, it's a diagonally down hitting move, does incredible work. Just in general, I feel like Qatar air is more punishable, and most of Qatar's moves don't have the spacing that necessarily bow down air has. The neutral air is really Qatar's big go-to move, and the bow, it almost seems like all of its air moves are big go-to moves that can just be thrown out in just about any situation. I don't know.
I mean, Taza, do you think there's anything else behind that? Behind that difference between Qatar's and bow?
Well, another difference I think is that Qatar's oftentimes moves the player's hitbox to use the moves, while bow's got a lot of things that like extends the hitbox from the weapon, but doesn't put the player in a bad position, right? Like, look at guitar down air compared to bow down air, right? You're extending an arrow rather than your entire body. Like, you got axe delay. I remember that axe back is kind of like axis downlight's kind of known as an anti-aerial, and it arguably now has a really good matchup against guitars because of how hard it is for guitars to get against that weapon. But bow doesn't. But bow doesn't have that same problem because its hitboxes aren't connected directly to the player. So that's another thing.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that bow has more range than guitars, but it keeps the fact that it has a lot of coverage and, quick, fast moves that, guitar has, but that range makes it stronger. So if you wanted to tone down bow air game, how do you think it would be done?
You've got to slow it down. I think that you should not be able to throw out as many bow air moves in such a short amount of time as you can right now.
I get the idea. I'm also kind of fighting against it because I feel like if you slow the bow down, it kind of ruins the identity. I think there's another option to where you could also significantly reduce the amount of force and damage behind a lot of those really fast moves. I don't think Sair needs to be as good as it is when it comes to knocking people back. Let it be that fast. That's fine. Don't let it kill people in orange off stage. Like that's one of those things where like it can hit people so far and it can be so effective for how fast it is. Instead of changing the speed, maybe you could change the force.
I will say that part of its strong edge guarding game is that you can just throw out so many moves without being punished.
True.
So if you just can't slow down the bow air at all, you're still gonna see people dying, maybe even at less damage because it'll do less damage. A few hits from the Sair, which is just that fast, is going to kill especially if people try to panic jump.
I'm actually gonna, you suggested that we make it slower. Taza suggested that we tone down damage and stun time. I'm actually gonna say that we tone down, basically the recovery frames. So, or not the recovery frames, I should say the frame advantage. So that includes both recovery, and stun time specifically. Like, because while I see the complaint about it being too strong because of damage and force, I am also going to say that the identity of bow is that when it first started, it was really weak, and it took forever to kill someone. And so they did buff that a little bit, and I appreciate that. But I think that I like it being fast. It just make it harder for, people to chain attacks together, make it easier for your opponent to get out of the move faster and punish those moves that you make.
Well,
that's sort of where my head is with that.
Hold that thought for just a second. Do you remember when the bow was very first introduced and they were showing videos and everybody was getting all excited? Mm-hmm. The bow was presented as a stringing / comboing weapon that was very largely ground based and based off of the down light. I think that the bow has very largely gotten away from that, and I think that the ground game is actually still strong. It has pretty good spacing, and you can get very good strings and combos off of it. But I think that that's very overshadowed by the fact that the air game is just so incredibly dominant. I would love to see the bow ground game make a bit of a comeback, and I don't think you're going to get that unless you can tone down the air game enough.
I'm going to say that comeback doesn't work here because I don't think bow's ground game was ever that good.
Yeah.
I think that when they introduced it and when they showed promo videos, they did ground moves and said, look at the cool ground moves, and everyone said, hey, let's use all the air moves. I don't think there was ever a time when top players were relying more on ground moves than air moves. Now, the question of whether or not we should try to force it into ground moves or whether that's where the identity of bow is up for debate, and that's, I think, something more for BMG to decide about where they want bow to be, as far as versus all the other weapons. But I don't think that ground was ever very powerful, at least in comparison to air moves.
Yes, it is now. Yeah, I agree. I think thinking about it now, currently the most I see ground moves used is like neutral light to get somebody's positioning out of place. But even then, a lot of times the ground moves are used in an aerial fashion using the gravity cancel. Like some really creative punishes I've been seeing from the best bow players so far is like a GC downlight be able to extend yourself forward, catch them out of whatever it is they're doing, and chain it into something else. But like rarely do we see startups like that on the ground, because ironically, the ground moves are the ones that are the most punishable. So that's why you're not going to be seeing too much from it.
So, maybe if the ground moves are punishable, maybe the air moves should be punishable too. And that's where the frame advantage comes in. So
I love how we weren't even going to talk about that at all.
Well, it's a subject that's been coming up as of late, and I'm expecting to see more of it next week, particularly in NA's 1v1 tournament. I really want to be able to see at least the top 5. I have a hunch that Bo is going to play a big part in it. Whether it's going to be Koji, Diana, Azoth, I might be wrong, but that's what I'm expecting to see a lot of, and that's what I'm looking forward to. I mean, looking at last week's Gravy Cancel Sunday, heck, tomorrow we'll be able to see if that's still a thing, because I'm going to be hosting that tournament again. And if Bo's still a prevalent thing, I think it's kind of worth talking about. And
actually, I think that's a really good segue into what we were going to talk about.
Right.
TWK got hired by BMJ. I didn't include this in the dev stream stuff.
No, you just ruined the segue.
But that's a segue.
Segway's still fine.
TWK has been hired by BMG as the combat designer, and I'm sure he'll be listening in on all these discussions. Physek mentioned the mega thread for balance. So when I say combat designer, what that really means is manager of all things balance. Mm-hmm. So unfortunately, that means he can no longer be on the podcast, at least as a co-host. I'm sure we'll bring him on as a special guest in the future. But just so you know, he'll be looking for your feedback and making the best balanced game that he can. I know he's definitely very well respected in the community. People know that he knows things about balance. He's made that amazing frame compendium, and he totally understands frame data. He has a lot of experience in the fighting game community, and knowing all these terms about how frame advantage works, and what these punishes and attacks and things like that should look like in a proper fighting game. So I can't wait to see what sort of stuff he brings out. Granted, I don't think anything drastic is going to happen, because we're all pretty happy with balance. I do want to reiterate, we talked a lot about Bo, but that by no means means that Bo is in fact broken. It could be strong, and top players really enjoy it, and it has a lot of options, but that does not mean it's broken, and 50% win rates are still a thing.
Right. I mean, when it comes down to it, we're really just talking about like the top echelon when it comes to that Bo play. Like everything that we discussed is really only a thing around that top 5 to top 10 player spot, I think.
All right. So the other thing I wanted to talk about was international playstyles, and this is something that we've started to see a little bit of, but I know that I was talking with Taza the other day about the difference between NA and EU, and it's becoming more and more pronounced as we go forward. Even Australia has gotten their own style, that all these different regions are playing differently. Like, it's almost a very regional based difference. So we're going to try to go over it just a little bit and sort of talk about what that means in terms of what's going to happen at BCX, and if any of these regions have a advantage. So North America has this tendency to be very aggressive, is what we've seen. Even the non-aggressive, there's a stigma in North America that it's like, if you're not playing aggressive, you should be playing aggressive. Mm-hmm. People will harp on other players in North America saying, I don't like you because you're not playing aggressively. And so while that's cool because aggressive play is fun to watch, there's the argument that North America's play is very impatient. You just run in, you get hit by things, you get punished. That's something that I've sort of noticed. I don't know if you guys agree with that.
I mean, that's what happens to me.
It's kind of split, but I definitely see that description of things being impatient. I think we've got a few top players that kind of make it up to the top 8 or top 16 of tournaments that are known for their passive play, but they never really make it too far. But when people play against them, there's a lot of complaints. Two people I know in particular, both from players, just from what players have said and what people have said in Twitch chat, I can think of straight to the point Wilson, sometimes known as the Wilson, is that Queen Eye player that's incredibly grounded, rarely goes off stage for things, plays a ton, and when you see him, you know that he's probably not going to be the most aggressive person trying to go for those crazy guitar strings. And then you've got Noel, who's recently making upsets, as we talked about earlier today. arguably plays a very reactive Koji, both the sword and the bow, kind of waiting for you to come in. Something that he does all the time is use that down sig on bow to be able to hit that board off the floor and stop you from whatever move that you're trying to do. That's a thing that frustrates a lot of players. But other than that, the players that they're frustrating is like the other 90%, which are just the kind of ones that want to go in constantly, be able to use that dodge aggressively, hit people all the time, and then find themselves dead in places that they shouldn't be. I know, like, I watched this match, but it was really funny. It was a best of 3 between Pickled Potatoes and Cake in losers' quarters. Cake went so hard for Guitar String that was trying to gimp Pickled Potatoes that he actually got him off the stage, got rid of all of his jumps. He's going to fall to his death, but Cake fell to his death first because he used all of his resources to get him there. And something like that. Like, that's a perfect example of like an impatient option to be taking.
So, I mean, to contrast that, then you've got the European players, and they're a lot more methodical about everything, up to the point where people are saying that EU tournaments are all boring, which, you can make that argument, and you can talk about whether or not that's true, but it's important to recognize that European plays a little bit more slow, a little bit more methodical, maybe a little bit more thought out. I know that certain players in EU have said that basically EU is way more dominating than NA, and that they're going to get destroyed at BCX, and, trash talk between regions regardless.
I mean, we did see Zaloxery take a combo breaker.
We saw them to take combo breaker, although I will say Zaloxery played very aggressively at combo breaker.
He did.
Like, I don't think we saw the typical EU playstyle when he came to combo breaker.
But I think a big part of that had to do with land too. Well, go ahead, Physek.
I was just gonna say that in general, there's always kind of been a bit of that split, even in the legends that were played. I remember many months ago when Bodvar was pretty much the only legend played in tournament in NA. We saw pretty much the same thing on the EU side of things, except instead of Bodvar, it was Lucian, and Lucian's guns were so incredibly dominant, and we had a few players like that in NA. We had players like Flex, who did that, and then he fell off of that style, he fell off of the game, but that style remained in EU, and I remember that was pretty much all we were seeing, and I was hearing about this, and I was just thinking, it's just so weird how different these two places are, where one place has one completely dominant legend, the other one is just completely different, none of the same weapons.
And even today it kind of carries over too. EU's got specific weapon styles. I know there's a lot more Lance players, a lot more Scarlet players in EU than there is anywhere else. You've got Lance, you've got Baki, you've got you have Logic on Sir Roland. People love their Lance play over in EU. It's just a common thing. As well as the bow, which was kind of innovated by Zaloxery ever since the weapon was released, which is now starting to pick up in other regions. But you're absolutely right. In regards to play style, not only is the difference between like the impatient and then like the passive rewarding play, there's also just the weapon and legend choices that seem to be a really big deal.
Yeah, I mean, you were saying like Scarlet and Lance play in general, that's something that EU has that NA we haven't seen very much of, so it's interesting. I mean, especially since we're all playing the same game. It's not like the game is any different in EU. So the question is if either region is doing it better, will the other region adapt to sort of join that playstyle? Like, EU seems pretty confident, at least of the players I've talked to, a lot of the top players, that their way of doing things is better. And NA is going to suffer when it comes to BCX.
And that's really hard. It's a really hard thing to call, because without the exceptions of like Daiku and Dobrein, who are willing to take the ping difference hits and try to go to other places and play, like you don't see these players mix and match like at all. So to see them be able to meet up at a tournament like BCX, which is going to be land based, is going to be really exciting. But it's hard to say when you're watching players who play against each other. Like, how would this player match up against somebody like from an NA server?
I do want to point out one thing. There's one player from NA who goes to EU with the same ping who is aggressive, and that is Egg Soup. And Egg Soup has historically been very aggressive. We did talk to him on the podcast before, and he said, "Hey, I'm trying to switch things up, and trying to be more methodical with my play, but that takes time, and he is in fact very aggressive." So until then, like, he's been playing in EU tournaments because he has the same ping whenever he has time, and he does place pretty high. He doesn't win. He doesn't get to the very top. So it's important to recognize that, and I'm sure that there's an argument to be made that Eggsuit gets to the top because he's just a good player, and not because his playstyle is dominant. So I'm really not sure what to think about what that means for this big NA versus EU debate. But certainly, like, I can't wait for BCX. I'll keep saying that because there's just so many different factors that are going to come into play. You mentioned LAN for like 2 seconds, but I want to go over that again. When I went to Combo Breaker, one thing I noticed was that even the players who are known for being a lot less aggressive became more aggressive when they were on LAN. And that could be a number of different things. And I think it is. One is that, like, when you're in front of a big audience, like, it becomes a spectator sport where you can see the spectators. Yeah. Everyone's cheering, and there's a lot of hype, and at that point all you want to do is like hit your opponent. You don't want to
to be the hype. You don't want the audience cheering for your opponent.
So there is that. There's also the fact that, at 0 ping, it's easier to do moves without thinking, hey, if I try to go in, I'm going to lag out and bad things are going to happen. That factor is gone out the window, so that's another thing to consider.
Yeah, the biggest thing is that it's actually easier to play the game. And that is not... And people make lag excuses all the time, and most of the time I think they can be legitimate. Because when you don't have input delay in the game that you are playing, that makes you that much more comfortable with the fact that the moves that you are doing, you are responsible for, and the mistakes that you are making, you are responsible for as well. And that could be easily said that, like, heck, in the Australian regional qualifier, we had a lot of hiccups at the very beginning because of the net problems with a lot of the players that were there. We had to see situations where they had to restart sets. And I can just imagine that on the ladder, there are plenty of games that players lose all the time due to a hiccup with their servers or their own internet connection. And that's just something that does not apply at a LAN tournament. And you can really let yourself shine in the sense of like, all right, I know exactly what I want to do, and this is how I'm going to do it, and it's going to work unless I personally screw up.
And you mentioned input delay, and honestly, that's something that your brain kind of adjusts for naturally. It's a psychological thing. If you push the button and your player does something in a short enough amount of time, your brain will kind of adjust itself to think that it was instant. But the other thing you have to remember just isn't a thing on LAN is rollbacks. Yes. And rollbacks are something that we see complaints about all the time. I know I hate it when I get rollbacks when I know that I've got someone in an awesome guitar string, but all of a sudden, oh wait, that didn't hit.
They did in fact dodge out when you didn't realize it.
And it's the worst feeling, and
the worst part is that noise that you hear when it connects, yes. And then you're like, oh wait, I heard it. I know I hit them with that nair. What the heck? And then you're back to being frustrated that the string that you tried to go for just didn't work because of the rollback.
And for me, I'm actually a little concerned about LAN because I am an audio-based player. I rely on my ears a lot. And that's also why rollbacks kill me a lot. Because I'll be sure, I hit that move, and I'm planning my next move based on the sound that I'm hearing. And all of a sudden...
What are you concerned about then? Like, that you just won't be able to hear it?
I'm concerned that I won't be able to hear on LAN. So I'm actually starting... I'm starting to play without headphones to try to actually get used to that, just playing with music.
Just so we're clear, at Combo Breaker, people could plug in their headphones and they'd be able to hear the game.
Okay, I'm happy.
So I there's this question of how viable that's going to be, because that was true when we were on our regular Brawlhalla section, but once we went up to the big stage, then I don't think that was a possibility. You had people like Sloxry who just like listen to his own music and get lost. So that's a sort of thing. I don't know. BMG will have plenty of time to figure that out, and we'll get there when we get there. Last thing is the Australian playstyle, which we just finally got a chance to actually sit down and see. And I gotta say, Australia has the most hype playstyle I've ever seen, because all those matches were very exciting.
Yeah, and that was interesting, because I almost want to say a huge part of that hype came from the fact that the scene in general is very underdeveloped when it comes to competitive play. And I'm not going to try to put that in a sense that they're not good. I'm saying that they don't have a lot of tournaments to play in. And like this was the very first one that they were able to play in that got like a significant award, and we were able to see, because I think only 26 Australian players ended up participating in this regional qualifier.
Mm-hmm. It wasn't very big.
But the ones that did show up were like the top of the ladder. We saw people, and we saw like 3 different clans or clubs that were represented or whatever based off the system that's inside the Brawlhalla game. So like being able to see that happen and all these players that normally just play against each other for fun, because Kylar said like when we play a ladder, there's no legend that's dominant. We just kind of play for fun because it's pretty much the same 26, 30 people playing each other.
Everyone was taunting in the beginning of their matches.
There was that one thing where they simultaneously chase dodged in and then taunted and they moved apart. I was like, what was that?
Daiku made a comment afterwards like, if you did that in EU, we would punish the crap out of you with a 0 to death unarmed combo. And it's like, yeah, but at least they're having fun.
Right.
Yeah. Now, what I will say about the Australian scene is, from what I saw, which was limited, it seemed like it tended more towards the NA style of play than the EU, but it was definitely somewhat of a happy medium between the two. You didn't see all of the players just being impatient, running in, getting themselves killed. It was definitely a little more methodical than that, but at the same time, you typically didn't see them all playing the spacing game and hanging back and playing reactive. So I do think...
Good happy medium is what we're seeing?
I think it was a good happy medium, and it may be that changes as time goes on, as the scene grows, as I think Taza said, it is pretty underdeveloped at this point, and it's, it has time. So maybe it'll change. Maybe it'll stay really hype like it is. I just know that I'm really excited for the C regional, because I'm hoping that that'll be just as hype.
Something significant to consider as well, I think. It was just one person's opinion, but Kylar kind of has the stance that, like, he's not above or equal to Tiger yet. And Tiger's dominant in the C scene. So it gives me an idea that Australia as a scene in regards to how they play is kind of on the lower end of the overall like high skill level when it comes to all of the regions. And that's something else I think that probably applies a lot to how hype it was. It was just because it was players that really didn't have this defined style of like, I've got 3,000 hours played on this in these tournaments or whatever, so I know exactly how I want to have this style going out. Like that's something else I think is a really big deal.
And it was also new players, so
yes,
there was always this thing about who's gonna win this match. Who knows? Anyone could win this match. Whereas in NA, it's like you get this matchup and it's like,
LDZ's playing.
We've seen this a million times. LDZ's gonna win this, things like that. And it's super awesome when it's an upset in NA because you don't expect that. But at least in Australia, there's nothing to expect. So everyone's like, wow, that was amazing.
Yeah, it was an Odin's chest every match. That's absolutely true.
I will say, we touched on this briefly earlier also, and I didn't actually get a chance to comment. I know that we were talking about playstyles and everything, and kind of how they might fit together in tournaments, whether or not EU was going to dominate NA, and I do just want to throw out, that's definitely something that could happen. Every region does have their own styles of play. I was talking to Aurum, who's a very highly ranked NA player who was one of, I think, third ranked in Southeast Asia while he was studying abroad in South Korea. And he told me Tiger was an insane player, but he was able to get a leg up on him sometimes because Tiger just didn't expect what Aurum was going to do. He had never seen some of the things that Aurum was going to do because they were from an NA style that Tiger wasn't used to. How much truth to that there is, how much that's just... who knows? But I'm definitely excited to kind of see the clash of playstyles at BCX and see, who's hype, who's boring.
Mm-hmm. And we'll have plenty of regional qualifiers until then to check out what each of these scenes look like and, who's going to end up going from each of the regions to win that plane and hotel ticket. But that's going to be it for the podcast. We've run out of time. More specifically, I've run out of time. I gotta go. Thank you again to Kylar Alice for coming on. Thank you to Taza and Physek for being my co-host this week.
Our pleasure.
And we will see you next week.